hột gà nướng, hột vịt lộn, hột vịt sữa, trứng cút lộn, bắp xào đây.
Welcome to 7 Million Bikes, a Saigon podcast. This is episode 3. My name's Niall Mackay and I'm your host. And today I have a guest who was suggested to me by Chris Dundon. So massive thanks to Chris for suggesting Damian Kilroy and introducing me to Damian, who's here today. Thank you very much, Damian.
Pleasure.
So Damian used to put on events at Cargo, which if you're a OG Saigoneer, you'll remember Cargo, which was a big music venue here in Saigon, put on a lot of great events. From what I hear, this was before my time in Saigon. And he's also a bar owner and club promoter, and also the organiser of the Coracle Festival, which is coming up the end of November, which is down in Ho Cham, which is an arts and music festival that I'm looking forward to. I'll be heading down there. And also as well, Damian has given away 3 passes to the Coracle Festival for our listeners. So stay tuned, and if you listen to the end of the episode, I'm going to tell you how you can win those passes. They're worth 1.5 million dong each. So thank you very much for giving them.
You're welcome.
So tell us a bit about Coracle then. I'm looking forward to it. I haven't been yet.
It's the second year. It's myself, Rod, who used to own Cargo, and Lynn from Saigon Outcast. So it's a collaboration between the 3 of us. It's one live stage, one DJ stage. We're at a new resort this year, so there's an outdoor pool, there's a live stage on the beach. The DJ stage is in a volleyball court, so it's a nice spot. We've got beach bungalows this year, so you don't have to camp.
Is that one of the barriers to people going that they don't want to camp?
It is, even for, I'm almost 40 now, so I struggle. That's why it's only 2 nights, because I couldn't do 3. So just a bit more creature comfort, AC, shower.
I mean, that's probably what I'd be looking to do. I'm nearly 40 as well now as well. So yeah, I mean, it's like in Glastonbury, right? You have like the glamping packages and things like that. Like you go down and you pay a pretty penny for it, right?
Yeah, we're not that expensive.
No, but I mean in Glastonbury, it's
sure, yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I think our bungalows are probably nicer than what Glastonbury has to offer, and a lot cheaper. But the lineup's great. We've got the Lemonheads playing this year. They played at Cargo before, so they're coming back. Lidmore's coming back. So it's nice to have some of those artists that played with us before in Cargo and to have them back in Vietnam. It's great.
Well, let's talk about Cargo then. So I've heard a lot about it. And one of the things, right, so, and I think this is how I got talking to Chris about you, is so I love live music. Like I'm from Glasgow, and as you probably know, Glasgow is like a live music city.
Yeah. The
Barrowlands. Like I was going there from when I was like young. Do you know when I was in Glasgow, right? Every band that came to Glasgow would be like, we love coming here, you guys are the best, this is the best stop American on the tour. Every band that would come, right, and you're like, yeah, but you kind of like, just say that everywhere you go, right? But then I went to my first gig in England, and I was like, even my first gig in Edinburgh, which is an hour down the road, I was like, this is not the same as Glasgow. And then I went to London, it was less rambunctious, less crazy. I was like, I don't think they were lying. And then I went to gigs in like America. I went to see Black Rebel Motorcycle Club in Australia.
Right.
They're a rock and roll band. Everyone stood there.
Yeah.
Just watching.
I had the same experience with seeing the Stone Roses in Australia. I was doing a Manchester band, and seeing them in Manchester is insane. Like the atmosphere. And then seeing them in Australia, people were stood around. You paid $100 for this. But I think Glasgow and Manchester are quite similar in that respect. They're kind of people who like to have a good time and like to have a party.
Good working class city.
Yeah. And like when you go out, you go out.
Yeah. But that gig I went to in Australia with the Black Rebel Motorcycle Club, there was literally, you could swing a cap between each person. They went like Glasgow, everyone's like shoulder to shoulder, and it's mental. And if you can push your way past somebody and you get the balls to do it and you're strong enough, you get past them and then that's it. And in Australia, you could walk in between people and people were like, hey, what are you doing? Why are you going in front of me? I'm like, there's so much room here. And, like, it's just such a weird experience. So
I think where we're from, that thing of being barging into people in a gig, it's not seen as an aggressive, act, or, you're not looking for trouble. It's just accepted. Whereas I had that with Stone Roses. I was wanting to jump up and down at the front, and people were getting really pissed off.
I know I'm repeating myself here, but like I went to see Franz Ferdinand, who are from Glasgow, and I saw them in Philadelphia, and it was just the first album had come out. They were getting pretty big. They came on the stage, and I was like going crazy, and I'm bouncing up and down. Everybody else just standing there watching. I was like, what is going on right now? I'd seen them in Glasgow, and it just goes mental.
Yeah.
So I'm getting off track. We're talking about Cargo. So tell us a bit about the history of Cargo Bar then, for people who would know about it and people who don't know about it.
Well, Rod, who started Cargo, he did Bob Dylan back in 2011 at RMIT.
So that's interesting because that just came up in the first episode with Woman 2.
Okay.
And she watched that, but from across the river.
Right.
And I didn't even know Bob Dylan had come here. And I went and Googled it and read about it.
Most people don't.
Yeah.
And then when I moved to Saigon, I used to do gigs in Croatia and stuff where I'd lived before. And then when I moved to Saigon, I was still getting emails from agents about artists wanting to play Croatia. And I kept having to say, I don't live there anymore. And then I thought, why can't we do something in Saigon? So I was going around looking at venues, hard rock and stuff like that, but there was nowhere suitable. And then I got in touch with Rod because I knew he did Bob Dylan. We sat in his office and he was like, I've got this new place we're opening. And he was like, I don't know what we're doing with it yet. You know, we've got this new venue, but we need stuff to go in it. And that was it really. The first show we did was with Frank Turner, an acoustic show, and that went pretty well. And then we did Japan Roids, the Cribs. We did sort of a bunch of regular gigs then. Black Rebel was probably the biggest one. Yeah, and then when it closed, it was just sad.
Well, and then so that's what I was saying is like I miss live music, you know, because it's just there is music here, but there's not like to the same level that we're used to.
Sure.
From where we're from, and I lived in New Zealand before here, and even then I missed music a bit, but we still got some bands came through. I saw Elton John, that was pretty good. Saw Black Rebel Motorcycle Club. So they are. It's funny that Black Rebel were here because they are my favourite band. Yeah. And I've seen them now in 5 countries, so it would have been amazing to have seen them here. So did you meet them? Yeah,
I looked after them for a couple of days, and they were nice. I mean, they were kind of jet lagged and a bit worn, and the drummer was sick, but once they got on stage, they were class, like, you know, real professionals, and they played over 2 hours. You know, it was I think we had about 900 people at that show, so that was probably the highlight, I think, for a lot of people. And sadly, Rod missed it. It was the only gig he missed. He was in Cambodia doing a gig up there.
When I saw them in New Zealand the last time, it was only about 700 people, so 900 would have been good. I've seen them. Saw them at Finsbury Park supporting Oasis as well. And they were good. It's a funny story with Black Rebel Motorcycle Club. So it was a Sunday, right, in Glasgow. We were in university. I was like 20 years old, something like that. My mate, who's massively into music, Mark Bean, I'll give him a shout out. My mate Beanie, he called me and he's like, "You want to go and see this band tonight? They're playing at Student Union. They're called Black Rebel Motorcycle Club." I was like, "That's a ridiculous name. I'm not going to go see a band called Black Rebel Motorcycle Club." And he just said, "How are you going to judge a band's music on their name?" And I was like, "Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I sound really stupid right now. All right, let's go check them out."
Unless they call the Wombats.
I love the Wombats as well. I love the Wombat. So it's one of these things. The name sounds ridiculous at first, but then once you just get used to it, it just becomes like the name. Yeah. So we went to see them at the Student Union in Glasgow University, Queen Margaret Union, I think it's called, and they just blew me away. Yeah. It's just unbelievable. And so after that gig, we went outside. And they were there hanging outside their tour bus. It was just their first album. I think it's not even maybe out or just came out. Yeah. And we ended up hanging out with them, like drinking Jack Daniels, and brought out a bottle of Jack Daniels, passed it round, we were chatting away to them, and since then I've just been hooked by them.
They're not as rock and roll these days.
No.
There wasn't much drinking going on. No.
That's alright, they're a lot older now, he's got like grey hair now, and it's
I think all those guys that went hard when they're younger, like, you know, a lot of people die, don't they? I think you've got to look after yourself at some point, like Bobby Gillespie, I think he's not had a drink in a while. Yeah, there's a certain time when you start looking after yourself.
It's that rock and roll lifestyle, right? You can't really do it forever.
As long as you give the impression on stage.
Yeah. So tell me more about Cargo Bar. So then it was getting bigger. You were getting more acts. What was the reception then from like the Saigon public?
I always feel that it was a little under-supported. You know, to think we had this great venue in Saigon that was right in the middle, you know, just over the bridge in District 4. I know, even though, like, we had some good gigs there, often think there should be a couple more hundred people at this. And even I had friends that barely even went, you know, that for a couple of years.
Why were they not coming?
They were just, expats just get lazy, I think. They sit on Bouvier and, like, have a few drinks, like, oh, I was going to go there, and then it's hot.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I've got to get a taxi, or, you know, it's like, if it was back home, you know, you couldn't live that close to a music venue, you know.
Well, I mentioned this before, yeah. I mean, I do a lot of events for my job and for privately as well, like comedy nights and things like that. And yeah, it's a challenge getting people out, and we talked about it before on the episode as well. You probably know, like, the D2 bubble or the D7 bubble, and just getting people to come out. It's I never really thought about it compared to back home, when it would be pretty normal to be like, I'm going to go to another part of the city. Or
yeah, because even as a kid, like, if in my teenage years, if I was, you know, 16, 17, whatever, going to a gig in Manchester, going to the Apollo, I'd live in Urmston, I'd get the train into the city centre, get to walk to the Apollo or the Academy, and that wasn't considered an effort. You know, it was just something you did. And you know, tickets went on sale, you book your tickets straight away. And I think there's a different culture here, certainly with the Vietnamese, but expats, once they get here, it's kind of like people get into their kind of bubble, like you say, and rarely leave it.
well, let's go back in time a bit then, because so you said you're nearly 40 and you're from Manchester, so tell us about that then. So I'm 37 from Glasgow, like I said, but I was like obsessed with Oasis growing up. Got into the Stone Roses as well, and kind of love the whole Manchester scene. So tell us a bit about that. If somebody's listening and they don't know what I'm talking about, what is the Manchester scene? Why was that an important time period?
I think it gave me some sort of kind of belief or kind of aim to, like, do things the right way, or do things the way, quite selfish really, you know, like, I think, you know, we go back to Tony Wilson and the Hacienda stuff, and they know we built this for the kids, and then it's like, that's bollocks, we built it for us. You know, we wanted to do something we liked. And there's an element of that, obviously, like, we get offered bands or acts sometimes, or I used to when we did Cargo, and it's like, I'm not putting them on. And it might have made sense financially, but it's like, I'm not doing that. There's always an element of like, oh, I like them, we'll do that. And then, even if you lose money, it kind of softens the blow. Because like we did a show here with Wild Beasts, who were amazing live, and that was a show we lost a good chunk of cash on. But it's also the show that, for the people who were there, that was probably their favourite show, even more so than Black Rebel. Like, Misha, who spoke to Pastor Street, like, that was an amazing show. And, like, Daniel, a friend of mine who was there at the time, was like, thank you for bringing these here. And it's like, it was hard, you know, it's kind of had a sick feeling in the stomach. We just lost a chunk of cash, but the people around you are going, this is amazing. You know?
The contrast in feelings, yeah.
Right.
So who did you see in Manchester when growing up? What bands did you see?
I mean, I went to, like, a lot of stuff with my dad when I was a kid, and then when I got to, like, 15, I went to the Charlatans at the Apollo with my mates when their self-titled album came out, and then I saw the Stone Roses on the Second Coming tour at the Apollo, and then after that, just loads of bands, even, you know, bands that were starting up, like Elbow, or, you know, that were, and Doves and things like that. Just anything that came about, I'd go with them. We had so many small music venues. The Roadhouse, sadly not there anymore. Ruby Lounge, Night and Day. You know, there's loads of those small places that you could see some great gigs. Even like Trail of Dead, American band, you could see it at Ruby Lounge for 250 people, 10 quid a ticket. So there was always that stuff going on. And that to grow up with that, you take it for granted. Or you live in other places. I remember when I first went to Zagreb, and no one had played there since the war. And it was like, oh, this was Kulisic where the Pixies played, and this was such and such. And like, it felt like the day the music died. Everywhere was locked up, and it was depressing. Yeah, and it's such a cool city, Zagreb. So that made us want to do some stuff there. And then it's the same with Saigon. I loved Saigon, but there was nothing music-wise going on. Like, you know, like there was a lot of DJ stuff, and, you know, people based here that were putting on DJ nights, which is fine, but live music is personally my sort of drug of choice.
Why wasn't there a music scene then when you got here?
I don't know. Like, I think culturally still, it's not something the Vietnamese generally do. You know, we talk about growing up in Glasgow and Manchester, and I couldn't imagine, you know, when I was like 13, 14, I was buying the Melody Maker, NME. I was obsessed with music, you know, listening to John Peel and new music and wanting exposure. And I think here there's a kind of, it's more like a commodity. You know, it's sort of disposable. It's like, oh, I like that because it's popular, it's famous. Ariana Grande or Justin Bieber. There's no passion behind it.
I think we're just being very expat-y right now because it's just a different culture, right?
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Like talking about we grew up with it, right?
Yeah.
So I'm thinking about if you're a 37-year-old Vietnamese man, same age as me, when you were 15, you weren't listening to Manchester bands, Glasgow bands. Like you had a completely different upbringing, so it makes sense why.
I get that, but also at the same time, I don't really see it from a Vietnamese thing, like the young Vietnamese. There's a few bands now that started in the last few years, like Cap Ho Quang are really popular now. They're playing Coracle this year. We put them on at Moon A Festival in 2015. Nobody came to see them, but they've done really well now. And they're playing for 3,000 people next week in Saigon at 350,000 a ticket. So there's things that are working here that the kids now, I think maybe that growth of the middle class where kids have travelled abroad, it's something now that they desire. Whereas it's still counterculture and it's still an alternative, I think. But on the whole, if it's not a part of your culture, it's not part of your life, you don't miss it. So, and I think that's the way. Like, we had a couple of Vietnamese staff that worked for us, and they didn't really get it until they experienced our gigs. I remember a girl after the vaccine show, she was like, "Wow, that was so good. The hairs on my arms, you know, like." But there was no media support for that kind of stuff. You know, no one's putting it on websites. It's not played in Vietnam. There's no exposure to it. So to try and get those kids to come to the gig, it's really difficult. You know, especially when it's $15 or $20 a ticket.
And I guess if the Vietnamese people aren't coming out, right, because it's not part of their culture or it's not kind of something that they're into, you're putting that on because it's your passion, and then you would hope that other expats are going to come out, and then they don't come out. So did that make it difficult, like doubly difficult, because you've got the local population aren't coming because they're not massively into it yet, and then the expats who are maybe going to be into it aren't coming either.
Yeah, I mean, because you'd like to think we can bank on the expats because they know it, they've heard of those bands. Or it was always tricky with like the British, American, Australian, Canadian as well.
South African.
South African.
Yeah.
You know, if like you could get about, like say for example, the Vaccines that were huge in the UK at the time. They just played the O2 Arena in London, but no one in America had heard of them, and no one in Australia had heard of them. But someone like Black Rebel, that were not as big as the Vaccines in the UK at the time, but they had a following in Australia, they had a following in America, and they were a bit of an older band, so more people had heard of them. That kind of made more sense. I think for us, we always did try to get more Vietnamese. I remember when we did the Cribs show here, we set up a Facebook page all in Vietnamese, and if you signed up, you got 100K entry. And we had about 60 odd kids that came to that with a 100K entry. The idea that if we could do discount entry for like young Vietnamese kids and get them in the door, and they enjoyed it and were exposed to it, then hopefully you've won them over then, and there's some loyalty there. And that was the sort of long-term plan. Even with the bar when we set up in Vung Tau, expats wasn't really our aim. It was like you need them at first, but we wanted to try and get young Vietnamese in. You know, we play a certain kind of music in our bar. We don't do YouTube where people can change the music, and we have, you know, a certain variety of drinks and a balcony. So we want to create that atmosphere but we want young Vietnamese. That's the long-term aim, and our aim was that with Cargo, and even now with the festival. You know, last year was a bit more like first year banking on expats. This year with Cap Ho Quang with 7 Uppercuts, we've got a couple of Vietnamese bands playing that have got good following, and I'd like to have, like, for the festival every year, if we can do around a third of the total artists as Vietnamese, then I'm pretty happy with that.
What was the biggest challenge then getting these acts over to Vietnam? Was it difficult?
Not difficult. We had a certain template where that kind of fee works. So if we can get a band and they'll play for that much, then that works. Sometimes you've got bands that were kind of big in the UK or big in the US, and they were playing Hong Kong and Singapore for big fees, and they expected big money from Vietnam. So it required agents that understand where we're at and bands that understand it. We're not going to make a load of money, but if we're playing Singapore and Hong Kong, we can flip Vietnam in between. Why not?
Yeah.
And once bands get here, they had a great time.
And you're obviously promoting your band, right? Future.
Yeah, everyone who comes here thinks that way, like, oh, Vietnam, never played there before.
It's a big market.
And if you think about it, like, how much does a British band get the first time they tour America? How much does an American band make the first time they tour the UK? Nothing. They lose money to do it, to build a profile. I remember seeing the National at the Academy 3 in Manchester, which is like 500 capacity, and there's about 150 people there for their first show. But if the National wanted to play Vietnam for the first time, now they want exorbitant amounts of cash to do it. For us, as long as the technical side is good, with everything on stage, there's no surprises in that respect. Amplifiers, microphones, and all that kind of stuff, they get what they ask for.
Do you not just get a whole bunch of like karaoke speakers and just link them all up together? You probably only need one of those karaoke speakers.
I discussed with Chris one time, we thought it was, I think we were really drunk, and we said, well, you know what would be a great idea for a TV show is to get like a handful of musicians from different bands, drop them in Vietnam for a week, and say you've got a week to source all your equipment and put on a show, and then see where
It'd be easy to go get a karaoke speaker and set up on the corner of the street. And
go to Guitar Street and pick up the
that's it. How was it? I was going to ask, how was it getting the equipment and things like that?
I think it's a lot easier now. When we first started, which was about 2013, so about 6 years ago, it was difficult. I think Fender had just come in then, so we could start getting Fender amplifiers. Before that, it was just Marshall stuff everywhere. So little specifics, I ended up buying an orange amplifier for the Cribs that I was in the UK and brought it back with me because you couldn't get orange amplifiers here at the time. Or if you could, they were like double the price of what they were in the UK. So there were sort of tricky things. I think now there are a lot more suppliers. There's a lot more equipment. So it's, in terms of the festival, it's a lot easier.
Would you, 6 years ago, would you have been able to put on the Coracle Festival?
I don't know. Good question. Probably. I mean, we always wanted to do a festival, even from day one. And Rod had a plot of land up in Nguyen that we actually checked out. And I'd love to do something here one day. The idea for us was to do stuff at Cargo and create something going in Saigon, where people were used to going to gigs, and then create a destination festival where they're like, I like all their shows. So it's built on some kind of foundation rather than... Yeah. It's a big risk to go in and say, right, we're going to put on a festival a few hours outside of Saigon, when people are like, what? That stuff doesn't exist or hasn't happened in Saigon. So.
The reason I asked the question, could you do it 6 years ago, is because I'm just thinking of somebody who's maybe listening right now who lives overseas or hasn't been to Vietnam, because I know there are some people who listen who fit that criteria. And one of the questions I would ask in season 1 was, what's the biggest misconception about Vietnam or Saigon? And one of the answers that came back a couple of times, which I hadn't even really thought about, was that people said their friends and family back home, they would think of Vietnam as this third world country, completely destitute, extreme poverty, which obviously we know that there is that in places. But for being the experience of now living in Saigon in 2019, it's a very modern city. You can get almost everything you need. We talk about food a lot. You can get all cuisines and things like that. But I know from talking to people 6 years ago and 10 years ago and beyond, I met an expat this week who's lived here for 24 years. I want to talk to her more. It would have been completely different. So I'm just thinking of the context of you being able to put on these shows. Could you get the equipment and things like that? Because Vietnam's obviously rapidly changing and it's opening up to the world. I just think that must have been so difficult, but maybe it wasn't.
I mean, it was tricky, and again, hiring stuff here is more expensive than in the UK or in Croatia, which seems ridiculous, because you think, how much are your staff getting paid compared to what staff will get paid in the UK? But I think because there weren't that many suppliers, and also if you say I've got 5 amplifiers in storage, how often are they getting hired out? In Manchester, they'd be hired out every night. it's a viable business to hire backline, to rent out backline in the UK. Whereas in Vietnam, I don't think it was back then. I'm not sure if it is yet, even still. The companies that hire out backline are also doing your sound and light and everything. It's a one-stop shop. Whereas in the UK, you can get just a backline hire business that specialise in that, and they're renting stuff out all the time. So even the staging and the production costs a lot more expensive here than the UK. And if you pass that on to a ticket price, people would moan and say like, "Oh, it's too expensive for Vietnam." Usually expats.
Yeah, yeah. So obviously Cargo's not around anymore. So what happened with that?
Well, Cargo, from my understanding, had 2 years, I think, left on its lease, and it was starting to work. Like Rod and Nguyen spent 3 years, getting to where it was, and it was finally starting to turn over decent revenue each month and get some decent crowds in. And then, then they got kicked out. The power that is Fin Group took over that part of town for, I don't know, whatever, apartments, shopping malls, all that kind of stuff. And that was it. And I think Rod tried to fight it, but it was, you're like a flea kicking an elephant.
And did you not have any thoughts to open up a new venue somewhere else?
I think for a while Rod did, and then I think he just got disheartened because the price of land now, the real estate in Saigon is insane. To have a venue in Saigon that was kind of central and accessible, there's no way it could work. If you think you need to have something on every night, and there isn't the audience there, or there wasn't at that time, to make that work. And I know a couple of other people have looked at trying to get another Cargo, but finding the space at the right price is really difficult. And then, even from a business point of view, you think, if I had this space, there's much better things, more worthwhile financially than trying to make a business out of a music venue.
So does that mean then that's kind of the end of the live band music scene then in Saigon?
I mean, there's a lot of small things like Yoko and Soma do live music, and Layla, we did the wedding present with Layla a couple of months ago. There's a lot of smaller things going on, but it's hard to make those work. Even when we did the wedding present, 80 people, it doesn't work,
It seems quite insurmountable when you put it like that. You want it in central location, right? So D1, D4, there's really not that much space. So you'd have to, and then if it's expensive, so you're talking about having to buy some land, build something, and then like you said, it wouldn't be the most profitable thing to make it into a music venue. So it seems like it could change. And I'm also thinking, in Glasgow, a lot of music venues used to be like bingo halls, or there used to be a theatre. Like the building's already there.
Yeah.
It just needs to be converted. Whereas like in here, doesn't. Got the opera house, but that's not becoming a live music venue anytime soon. Yeah,
it's tricky. The only way I could see it happening is if someone did something out of town, like Go Back or whatever. But then it's a trek to get that.
No one's going to go back.
We had difficulty getting people from Bui-Vien to District 4. No one's going to go back.
What about, I've not been to the Caravel, but I know they do comedy shows. Would that be a feasible venue? I don't know how big it is.
I don't know. I went there to see Bill Bailey last year. Was that last year? I don't know. There are things I've looked at that are kind of got a live room now. So there's potentially, there's potential to do stuff there. But again, that's probably 200 people maximum. So if you want, say when we did those shows with the Cribs and Black Rebel and stuff, we need a space that could do 500 people to make it work, and that's just not possible. So the only thing then is the festival. The festival is the only time we can make that work. If it goes well this year, then I'd like to do something in Saigon and do like Coracle in the city. That's the idea, but we'll see how.
Well, we just had that beer festival that was at the youth centre. Would that be a good space?
That's what.
His face is lit.
That's what we've been looking at. Yeah.
That would be cool.
The Youth Cultural Centre.
That's it, the Youth Cultural Centre. Oh, well, what's this space? So, after Cargo Ballin, you moved to Vung Tau, is that right?
Yeah.
So, were you sick of the big city? What happened there?
I got a bit depressed when Cargo closed, because that was the thing that I lived for every day, you know, like checking my emails and like, you know, seeing what bands were playing in Asia, Singapore, and messaging their agents, say, look, can you flip in Vietnam? And then, you know, and it's a real emotional roller coaster. You know, you get shot down sometimes and it's frustrating, and then other times you get, you know, you wake up and you've got a great email, then you get something else that comes through, like, great. Like that, when we did that Saigon Music Week, and we had the Lemonheads, Jaguar Ma, and the Vaccines all in 1 week at Cargo. That was great, you know, and it was an exciting time. And then once that's taken away, I just lost a lot of. I didn't want to get up in the mornings, you know. I lost motivation, and being where I lived, just on Family Lao there, I started drinking a lot, and it was a bad state to be in. So I just got out of the city for a while. My girlfriend was coming down to Vung Tau, and every week, and we were hanging out there. But we didn't like. I didn't like any of the bars. It was all like girly bars and old Aussie expats, you know. So I missed the sort of craft beer scene that just kicked off around that time in Saigon. So we just decided, kind of born of frustration, really. Like, let's open our own bar.
Oh, cool. So you went to Vung Tau with the intention of opening a bar?
No.
No?
I went to Vung Tau with the intention of just taking some time out and living by the sea. And then, just hanging out there. It's a shame there's no nice bars here. Like, I used to go to Pasteur Street quite a lot. Malt was my favourite bar in Saigon. And it's like, there's nowhere like this in Vung Tau. You know, it's all a bit seedy, and so I think it was just one evening I was sat at a corner bar there with my wife now, and I said, we should open our own bar. She was like, okay. And that was it.
How many people have had this conversation, right? Were you drunk when you said that? Everyone's been drunk and they're like, we should open a bar. You're one of the people who did it.
Well, around that time I was drunk most nights.
So what was the bar then you opened up in Vung Tau?
Cask. So it's just on Front Beach there, upstairs bar.
So tell us what makes Cask a bit different to the bars that are in Vung Tau?
It's a bar that we like. It's in our taste. So again, like when we were talking before about, you know, we're doing this for this or whatever, it's like, really, it's kind of for ourselves, you know, indulging ourselves. And we serve craft beer, we've got really good cocktails, the music selection's good. We don't open in YouTube, so, you know, we have a strict music policy. We have a quiz night that didn't exist in Vung Tau before. We have open mic night. We do occasional live music, mostly acoustic stuff. So none of that happened before. It was just, you know, girly bar. And what's been nice when we started, it was a lot of teachers, a lot of expats, because people think of it as an expat bar in that area. But now we're probably about 70% Vietnamese, mostly young Vietnamese, which is really nice. And they're a lot easier to deal with. They're really polite. They don't cause trouble. They don't smash glasses. You know?
And then how did Coracle come about? You were saying, so last year was the first year.
You know, it took a good year focusing on the bar, on Cask. And then after a while, I just started to get itchy feet, you know. We should do something. We should do music. And again, talking to Misha and some of the Matt Ryan and stuff whenever I'd see these guys in Saigon. And that gave me like, yeah, we should do something. And Saigon's not really possible. And we'd always talked about doing a festival. We did Nguyen Festival in 2015, and then we couldn't do it the second year for a number of reasons. And I always felt we missed an opportunity there, because you can't do a festival for 1 year and then leave it. It's like, what's the point?
Yeah.
You know, you're not going to make money on the first year. So I first got in touch with Dan from Observatory, and then Rod and Lynn, and we talked about setting up a festival in Ho Chi Minh, not far from Vung Tau. And the idea was we're in it for 3 years. So we're going to give it 3 years and then see how we go. Last year we had some issues, we had some problems, but, you know, I think as long as we improve every year, I think that's the main thing. And I think this year the lineup's better, I think the venue's better, I think we've learned some lessons from last year that we're not going to repeat again. So production-wise, we had a terrible terrible company last year.
Yeah.
And they sometimes what happens here, they give you a quote for a job, and then a week before they're like, oh no, it's going to cost a lot more now. When they've got you over a barrel, they know you can't switch that late to someone else. So this year we're going with people that we've worked with before that tried and trusted, that arguably we should have gone with last year. So I think we're better prepared, and I think it's going to be good this year.
And how many people did you have last year?
Last year we had 600 or so people. Quest was obviously the week afterwards, and that got shut down last year. So it was also bad timing for us. But because that's a busy time of year where acts are in the region, it makes sense. It's hard for us. We don't have the budget to fly someone over for a one-off festival in Vietnam from the UK or from the US. So it needs to be something they can flip in while they're in Asia. So it makes sense for us to do it around that time. But Quest was already established. I think at that point they had 5,000 or 6,000 people going to Quest. So it wasn't the best time, to go head to head with Quest. But I think we're slightly different anyway, and our long-term aim is a different kind of festival than what Quest wants. So.
And so how have you sourced the bands then for this year? Similar, they're touring in the region, or?
Yeah, I think a couple of them are playing Clockenflap in Hong Kong. That's usually like when Black Rebel and Vaccines and stuff came here. That was around that time when they played Clockenflap Festival. So there's a couple of acts that are playing there and are in the region at the time. So there's a few acts we got offered, and then some didn't work for the. I think that's the difficult thing. Whereas Cargo before, if you got offered a band and they said we can only do the Thursday in Vietnam, we did the Thursday. Whereas now we're saying, can you do the Saturday? We're only on Friday, Saturday, and like last year, the Vaccines wanted to come back last year for Coracle, but they could only do Sunday, and our festival was Friday and Saturday. So it's one of those. If it was, just a gig at Cargo, we'd have done the Sunday night.
So what should people expect from this year's Coracle Festival?
I'm really pleased with the lineup again, considering the budget we have. I think, and the ticket price, I think the lineup's really good. It's really diverse. There's Lemonheads, which most people will know about, and then this girl Nonku Theory, a South African girl, who's amazing. So I'm excited to see her. William McCarthy, who was in Augustine's, they were one of my favourite bands. He's coming over and playing. He's amazing live as well. So it's really diverse. And we've got Beats, Bars and Breaks, the hip-hop crew from Hanoi coming down. Lidmore's coming back, the Danish electro-pop kind of thing. It's a bit like Bjork. She's great. And then Fleet Mac Wood.
No, I was going to ask you about that, because I was looking at the lineup, and I was like, wait, Fleetwood Mac are playing?
Why are they so low down?
And they were so low down, yeah. And I had to look 2 or 3 times. I'm like, and then what's it called?
Fleet Mac Wood.
Fleet Mac Wood. They can get away with that?
Yeah, they even come with a seal of approval.
Are they a cover band?
No, they're a remix project. So they play house music. So they're on the DJ stage, but all their set is remixes, re-edits of Fleetwood Mac songs.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
That's
so like they're playing again Clockenflap and Neon Lights Festival. They're in the region, and I was looking at some. I think they played Burning Man. They played 6 years in a row at Glastonbury, and they played Wonderfruit last year. And one of our investors went to Wonderfruit last year, and he said they were the best thing of the whole weekend. It was great fun. So they play at midnight on the Saturday. So the Saturday, Lemonheads close the main stage on the Saturday, and then Fleet Mac Wood play after that on the DJ stage. So the last night's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I think I just told you, I messaged my wife today and I was like, we're going to go to Coracle. It looks awesome. Yeah. Well, let's at this point then, if you've been listening this far, thank you very much. We're going to tell you how you can win 3 passes worth 1.5 million dong each. What you need to do, if you haven't already, like the Facebook page, 7 Million Bytes, and then share the link for this episode via Facebook. And then if I see that you've liked the page and that you've shared the episode, we're going to put you in a draw. We're going to pull 3 names at random, and I'll be able to send you a pass worth 1.5 million for Coracle. So thank you very much for that.
No problem.
So quickly tell us, when is it? How do you get there? What do people need to know if they want to go to Coracle?
So it's 2 nights, 3 days in Ho Cham at Hung Phong Resort. There are buses leaving from District 2, from Saigon Outcast, on the Friday, returning on the Sunday. I think they leave at 12, 3 and 6 p.m. The ticket's 1.5 mil. All the lineup is on the website and all the necessary information.
All right, that sounds good. So we'll move on to the final questions that I ask everybody at the end of each episode. So first of all, what bike do you drive and how do you deal with the traffic in Saigon?
I drive a Honda Vision, and Saigon actually, I quite like it because I'm only here 2 days a week. So compared to Vung Tau, I kind of like the bus for a couple of days and nipping in and out and things like that, you know. So I don't really have a problem with it. When I lived here, I didn't ride a bike. I lived on Family Lao and like got Seons everywhere. So.
What was it like living on Family Lao? Why did you choose to live there? For anyone who doesn't know, that's like the backpacker area and pretty dodgy.
What are you implying? No, I lived in a few places. I started off in District 5, moved to Phu My Hung, didn't really like it in Phu My Hung. And then for practical reasons, being close to cargo and being just in District 1, I lived on Family Lao, and it was only supposed to be short term, and then it ended up like 3.5 years. So.
And well, what's the oddest thing you've seen on a bike?
Yeah, it's weird. There's a lot really. Like,
it's the thing. Everybody's got a story. It's a strange
like,
question, but everyone's got a story.
I've seen a pig. I've seen a fridge freezer. I've seen another motorbike strapped onto the back of a bike. But I think when you're here for that long, it doesn't surprise me anymore. You know, it's not something I think, oh, there's just, you know, another day.
But I was just talking to someone
normal.
about this just last week, and this is the thing. I've still been here for a few years now. There's so many things in Vietnam you just like, yeah, you don't even pay any attention to it. Like we kind of talking earlier about the karaoke machines on the street and like the speakers on the street. Like, you know, like that you don't even give it a second glance if there's somebody on the street with a massively loud speaker singing into a microphone.
Yeah.
But then you take a step back, like there's no other country in the world where that would be happening, right?
And when I think about it, and I think, yeah, it is a weird place when you first come in, and like you're like, this is bizarre. And I have that experience when I see bands, when I pick them up at the airport, and they're driving through this chaos, this sea of bikes, and they've all got their phones out, videoing it. It's like, this is nuts. Now look at that, there's 6 people on the motorbike, and you think like, yeah, it is a bit nuts when you first get here. After like a few years, you just get accustomed to it. Because
it's just the way of life. Every country's different, right? There's just some things here that are a little bit different. So have you got one thing that you can think of, the oddest thing you've seen on a bike?
I think when I did that H2H ride a few years ago, and then we were going through, where is it, like Bun Ma Thuc area. Yeah, and it was a big pig strapped onto the back of a bike.
Alive or dead?
Dead. It's like a big dead pig, and it's like, all right. Yeah.
How else are you gonna transport your dead pig, right? So you've got 24 hours off, right? And you come up to Saigon for 24 hours. What do you do?
I usually where I used to live on Family Lao, I used to like the bokor for breakfast at Pho Queen.
Why does this always come up? Have you haven't heard previous episodes? Like bokor seems to come up like 50% of the time. I'm
probably not good with foreign food, but bokor's like beef stew, isn't it? So I think that's the Irish in it.
No. So this has come up so many times now. And I know you've listened to a couple of episodes, but it's come up before because I find it hilarious. I love bokor as well, and like you just said, it's beef stew.
Yeah.
But you have it for breakfast.
Yeah. So that, and then.
So you start the day off with beef stew.
Bokor, yeah, and then that's the thing about Saigon. It's really good for food and drink, but there's not a lot to do it.
So, tell us.
If I had a day off, I'd probably get out to District 2 to the boathouse, sit by the river there, because even though it's only 20 minutes away, but it's like an escape from the city.
Yeah, it's my favourite place.
Yeah, and I love sitting there. I remember saying to Misha one time, it's like, the thing about the boathouse is I never feel in a rush to leave. I could sit here all day, you know, and
Alright, so we got bokor for breakfast, then you head out to the boathouse.
Boathouse for lunch, and then probably into the evening some sundowners.
Yeah,
Then,
it's a good place to go for some sundowners. Yeah,
and then back into District 1. I think like malt, some of the craft beer places past the street, whatever. There, I've been in the new tap room, which is nice. Union Jacks for tea. So I'm like, that's really expat. Craft beer, Union Jacks, boathouse.
Hey, it's your day off. You can do what you want. I mean, that's a pretty good day for me as well.
Yeah.
Well, this one, we're going to go outside of Saigon, so you've got a whole week to explore Vietnam. Where would you go?
There's a few places. When I first came here, I did all the tourist places and that. But Quy Nhon, I never made it to. And Phung Nha Cave, is it? The big cave. There are a couple of things I like to do. I've done the H2H cycle ride a couple of times, which is a charity ride from Hanoi to Ho Chi Minh. They do every year around April. So that was kind of cool in terms of seeing Vietnam off the beaten track.
That's incredible. You cycled the length of Vietnam.
The second time my dad did it as well.
Wow.
69 years old.
That's crazy. That's awesome.
Yeah.
What was that like then?
It was
I know,
great.
so the H2H is an unbelievable event. Like, a lot of people ask me, am I going to do it? I would like to. I still think I could. But, like, so what's that like then?
It was great. It was hard work, especially for me that I don't do that much exercise. And the first year, I think I got loads of sponsorship the first year because I think most of my friends thought, you're not going to do that. And then when I started doing it the second year, people were like, it can't be that hard then. But the second year I did it with my dad, that was pretty special. Like, I've lived in Vietnam now for 10 years, so don't get to see my parents or family that much. So it was nice for my dad to come over and spend a month together. And that was pretty cool. It was just good, father-son bonding time. Lots of, chats about what Manchester United are getting up to. And,
you're a Manchester United fan?
Yeah, sadly.
Now that must have been an incredible experience, and you must have seen such another side of Vietnam. Because, like we mentioned, like the perception that people have of Vietnam is probably what you experienced on that bike ride. But then we live in Saigon, and it's not like that at all.
But I think sometimes Saigon gets a bit of a bad rap, but because like any big city, it's got its problems. Like people getting mugged or backpackers getting targeted and taxi scams and things like that. But then when you get out into the countryside and stuff, and people are so nice, and we used to have in Vietnamese, the slogan on the battle, the information that tells people what you're doing. People were so grateful, they come out giving you beers and stuff. It's great.
Yeah, I mean, the Vietnamese people are amazing.
Yeah.
It's just so friendly, for sure. All right, so we talked about a few places to go drinking, eating, but do you have a hidden gem that you could share with people?
There's a place we used to go to, and I had to check earlier with Rod the address. It's on Din Tin Huang, and it's about 190. It's a duck noodle place that used to be open at 4 or 5 in the morning. So after we finished at Cargo, and we'd had a good few drinks inside us, there's this place, and they called it medicinal duck noodles. So it was pretty special.
190 Din Tin Huang.
I think it's around there.
Well, we'll find it and we'll put it in the show notes.
If you go there at 4 a.m, it'll be the place that's open.
The one that's open. We'll put it in the show notes if people want to go find it. They can do it. Well, awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great to hear about Cargo, the music scene. I'm excited for Coracle. It's good to know that there is some live music. I'm going to satiate my thirst to go and see some live music. And thank you very much for the ticket. So again, I'll remind you, if you want to win one of 3 tickets for the Coracle Festival, like the Facebook page, share the link for this post, and you'll go into the draw. So thank you very much. Good luck for Coracle, and thank you for joining me.
Cheers. Thank you.
Trứng cút lộn mất sao đây.
Thanks for listening to another episode of 7 Million Bikes, a Saigon podcast. Apologies if the sound quality wasn't the best on that episode. I've been having massive troubles with my microphone, and then getting a replacement microphone and getting the original one fixed. And I actually had to record that episode on the computer microphone, which is not ideal. And a massive thank you to Lewis Wright, who tried his very best to make that sound quality as good as it possibly could be, and that was as best that we could get it. So thank you to Lewis, and thank you to Lewis as always for composing the theme music for 7 Million Bikes. Thank you to Nguyen for helping me design the cover art for 7 Million Bikes. If you want to get in touch, you want to send me an email, you can get me at 7millionbikes@gmail.com, or you can get us on Facebook. Go leave a review on Apple Podcasts. Remember, you can get the podcast anywhere that you listen, so Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, and on the website 7millionbikes.com. So thanks for listening. I hope you're enjoying the show, and have a good week. Cheers.
Sữa trứng cút lộn mất sao đây. Mất sao đây.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you're like me, you may use your laptop at places where you have to use public Wi-Fi. This opens you up to digital snoopers. It's a massive problem. It can be your internet service provider, or you know who, looking at what you do online, or a cyber criminal trying to steal your bank passwords or credit card info, or even a hacker at the next table trying to steal your sensitive data. These days, it is vital that you keep your data safe. NordVPN keeps all of these snoopers away. It makes your internet activity private, protects you from accessing dangerous websites that are phishing for your data, and lets you enjoy your favorite content securely, even while away from home. And it's easy to use, even I could use it. I've actually been using NordVPN for years now here in Vietnam, and I'm excited to be an affiliate partner with them. I've used NordVPN to watch Netflix, BBC, Disney Plus with ease. And I also know that my information and data are safe from prying eyes, whoever they may be. Join now and you'll get 68% off and 3 months free when you go to my link, nordvpn.com/SMB. Just again, for those hard of hearing, nordvpn.com/SMB. The link is also in the show notes. I know nobody checks them out, but go check that out and you can get the link from wherever you are listening to this podcast. As an affiliate partner, it also means that I will get a small commission when you sign up, but at no extra cost to you. So not only will you be getting a great deal through 7 Million Bikes, you get a great VPN and you'll be supporting 7 Million Bikes podcast. Stay safe online and enjoy the shows you love. Any questions, just let me know. You know how to get in touch with me. And thanks for listening to this show. Cheers.